With the war, that commitment has been especially evident in our work on behalf of Ukrainians both here and in Ukraine. To better serve our recent arrivals, we have fundamentally restructured our business model and have been able to enroll more than 2,000 members from that community. And for a second year, we are working with the college, the Ukrainian Cultural Center and Educational Center, and other organizations to fund high quality ESL programming in our region. What was initially an emergency response has sadly become a part of our regular order of business as we and the rest of our community learn to live with the consequences of Russia's genocidal war in Ukraine. In the dialogue series, we and Manor are committed to bringing you speakers who offer knowledgeable and in-depth information about current conditions in Ukraine and the war. In the changing political environment, effective advocacy, be it with political leaders, friends, co-workers, or neighbors, is more important now than ever. And these forums help to ensure that your advocacy is based on the best information available. Today's presentation will focus on the tragic consequences of war to Ukraine's soldiers, the heroes, who defend the country against Russia's onslaught. Dr. Perry will be introducing our distinguished panelists shortly, but before I ask him to do so, I wanted to acknowledge the important work of Manor's and our credit union staff in preparing these events. Presenting the Ukraine Dialogues is a team effort between our institutions. Our staff, led by the credit union's incoming CEO, Anatoly Murha, and Kelly Pfeiffer, Manor's Vice President for Marketing. Anatoly and Kelly have worked hand in glove to ensure the success of this event and the Dialogues program as a whole. I am deeply grateful to them for their excellent teamwork. Dr. Perry.
Thank you so much, Roman. At Manor College, we're grateful for our collaboration with UKRFCU and other collaborations that help us to offer more than 35 associates, bachelor's, and certificate programs. We provide our students with excellent academic and transformative opportunities that enable them to fully develop as individuals. And education at Manor leads to an understanding of scientific, humanistic, and ethical principles so that our students form a global vision. Today is Manor College's 15th Ukraine Dialogue series program, and it's formally titled Supporting Ukraine's Service Members and Veterans. Our chaplain at Manor College, Father John Tripita, has written a prayer for Ukraine to start us off. Loving God, we pray for the people of Ukraine, for all those suffering or afraid, that you will be close to them and protect them. We pray for world leaders, for compassion, strength, and wisdom to guide their choices. We pray for the world, that in this moment of crisis, we may reach out in solidarity to our brothers and sisters in need. May we walk in your ways so that peace and justice become a reality for the people of Ukraine and for all the world. Amen.
Amen.
Now, let me please introduce our speakers. We are so blessed with amazing speakers who are here today out of their pure, gracious kindness. Once I introduce our speakers, I'll introduce our moderator, and then she will get our conversation started. Dr. Eugene Holuka is an internal medicine specialist and the Vice President of Physician Development and Outreach at Northwell Health's Staten Island University Hospital. Ahead of the recent 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited SIUH, the hospital, to recognize the health system's ongoing efforts to support medical providers in Ukraine. He also met with wounded Ukrainian soldiers who received advanced prosthetics and critical rehabilitation after sustaining devastating injuries in the Russian invasion. At that time, Dr. Holuka received Ukraine's Order of Merit from President Zelensky himself, a special distinction awarded to individuals for outstanding achievements and unwavering efforts in helping wounded Ukrainian soldiers. And we thank Dr. Holuka for that. Mr. Darrell Owens is the former National Security Advisor to United States Senator Pat Toomey. In that role, he handled Senator Toomey's military, veterans, foreign affairs, homeland security, and intelligence issues portfolio. He is currently serving as the Director of Government Relations for America's Warrior Partnership. Warrior Partnership is a national nonprofit that works to prevent veteran suicide and has been working with Ukrainian veterans. Darrell's a member of the United States Army Reserve, and he's been deployed overseas, including to South Korea, Poland, and Germany. Darrell recently returned from the United States Army Europe, where he was the Assistant Foreign Policy Advisor and Congressional Liaison. And of course, we thank Darrell for his work.
Thank you, sir.
And our moderator this afternoon is Honorary Consul of Ukraine to Philadelphia, Iryna Mazur. Consul Mazur recently received Ukraine's State Medal of Merit. The medal was presented to her by President Zelensky himself at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. This was Consul Mazur's second state medal, recognizing her dedication, her work, and her tireless, and I do mean that because I know Iryna, her tireless advocacy efforts on behalf of Ukraine. The first medal, the Order of Princess Olha, was awarded to her in 2021. A little background on Consul Mazur is that she is a practicing immigration and naturalization attorney with Mazur Law Firm in Huntingdon Valley, Pennsylvania. She previously practiced law in Ukraine, where she held various positions, including working as a chair of the legal department at the Anti-Monopoly Committee of the Lviv region. In March of 2015, she was appointed as a volunteer advisor to the Permanent Mission of Ukraine to the United Nations, and later as an advisor to the Foreign Relations Committee of the Ukrainian Parliament. Mrs. Mazur was appointed to her current post of Honorary Consul of Ukraine in July of 2019, so just before the pandemic, and her consular district is the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Notably, she is the only female Honorary Consul of Ukraine in the United States, and she's also the mother of a current U.S. Navy service member who happens to be a Manor College alumnus. So we're very proud, as you know, of them both. So let's please welcome our guest speakers and invite Consul Mazur to help us to begin the dialogue. Iryna?
Thank you, Dr. Perry. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone who joined us here today. Dr. Holuka, Captain Owens, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for all your efforts, for everything that you did and what you do for Ukraine. I have an honor today to be your moderator, so I will be strict and I will allow each of you 15 minutes. Then there will be a reminding time of 5 minutes to conclude your opening statements and your remarks, and then we will transition to questions and answers. I will remind you of time. I will not be shy of it. And I will start with Dr. Holuka. Dr. Holuka, can you hear me?
Yes, I do, clearly.
Okay. Well, congratulations again on your medal. And thank you very much for everything that you do for probably the most important Ukrainians at this time. Of course, we cannot distinguish who is the most important one, but we all can agree that those men and women who defend Ukraine and who wouldn't let Ukraine fail in 3 days, as it was predicted by the entire world, they are probably the most precious resource that Ukraine has. And it's our duty and our honor to help them, and you on the front lines of the medical field helping them. Could you please tell us your story and tell us your remarks?
Well, when the war initiated at the end of February, I got notified from the ministry that they needed dire medical equipment in a very short period of time. That was 48 hours after the war started. So I picked up the phone. I called. We have a very large system. I'm part of Northwell healthcare system, which comprises of over now we're up to 19 hospitals, close to 22 hospitals now, where I contacted the chairman, and that was Monday. By Friday, we had over 18,000 kilos of medical equipment that was ready to be transported by plane. And by the following Monday, it was already on the ground in Lviv. First of all, it had to come into Warsaw, and then from Warsaw, it had to be transported to Ukraine. And then that capitulated, continuing not to get off track, because it's very easy to get phone calls from Ukraine always asking for equipment, be it as it may, militarily to medical to including body bags. And so I kept on point, staying on medical equipment. I noticed during a short period of time, there has been multiple organizations that have been getting involved, doing their own things. The problem arises, I see even to this day, is there's so many good people, good organizations that are willing to help, but there's no center point of communication between one Ukrainian organization with the other. So therefore, there'll be a period of times that in a short period of time, they needed level 4 body armor. Instead, they were receiving level 3 body armors, those are the ones that are used on local forces. But that actually corrected through time. But I remained to stay in the medical. So we first started asking direct questions because I needed to know exactly what they needed. It's very easy, and it's very good and humbling that many organizations were doing the first aid kits, but the first aid kits that they started, they just didn't know. They didn't understand what comprised of an IFAX. All right. Right now, a first aid kit is totally different on the front line. It's built on an individual requirement that a regular soldier has. But that it too took some time, took some learning curves to learn through your mistakes. You become an expert after you failed multiple times. So that's what we've done. And I've been talking to many organizations throughout the United States, including the 4 different waves of Ukrainians, the old diaspora, the center, even the newest ones. Nobody communicates with each other. Still to this day, nobody communicates with each other. All right. Even right now, I have a team that's leaving next week, and I already have the Ukrainian Canadian Fund, that's very well organized and very well set in Lviv and in Poland, that they actually have a system, that they have enough surgeons, appropriate nurses. They knew specifically what's going on right now. So right now, as we speak, in my little cube, I actually bring, with an organization called Kind Deeds, sick Ukrainian below-the-knee amputation soldiers, that we bring them, give them the prosthetics, get the rehab in my institution, and then they return. As a matter of fact, there's quite a few of those soldiers that actually are going back into the front line. They send me pictures, and I start laughing how a sniper could be walking around with a long sniper rifle with a long muzzle and a suppressor, and he's walking around with his prosthetic leg at the same time in the mud. I mean, you just can't make the compassion that they have to fight and protect their country is overwhelming. So that's what we're doing right now, and we're continuous. So this team that I have right now that's going, we've got 10 ambulances that next week are getting picked up at the Czech Republic, and individually are being driven to Ukraine and going to the territorial force, which is now attached to the Ministry of Defense. Right now, the situation is getting dire. I got communication just 3 days ago that the secondary line of the hospital system, there's about over 80 of them, are in dire need of simple stuff. They need simple surgical tools, because after you heat them up and use them all the time, they eventually crack. They need respirators. The respirators are getting old. They break down because the soldiers are being intubated. They're in the operating room. Some of them don't make it. And they need respirators, defibrillators, incubators, colostomy bags, even to the point where the government trusts me. They'll send me a letter or they'll send me a text and said, Gene, I need 5,000 body bags. Do you know how grim and depressing it is for me to go to a Ukrainian organization and I ask them for, чи ви можете мені дати 5,000 мішків для тіла? They look at me and they're saying, you're so morbid. No, that's not being morbid. It's what they're asking me. All right. So even when I spoke with Bishop Boris Gujak about it, he goes, that is required too in this war. So don't get offended. Don't get upset. If they ask you that, get it. All right. So, but the situation is going to get progressively worse. The problem is that in this scenario right now, I only could tell you what's going on in the United States. People already have been giving, and they're starting to forget that there's a war going on. There is. The local diaspora are starting to forget. A little bit. You could see it. They don't like to talk about it, but I kind of put them straight in their face and I kind of remind them that there's a war going on. And I kind of still continue to shake them down and said, "Ми вже дали." And I said, "То дуже дякую, але я потребую трохи більше." Okay. So, but it is what it is. It's going to get progressively worse. And we just have to just remember and stay focused and do whatever you possibly could do. I don't insult anybody. It's very nice and noble that somebody gives a couple of dollars, a couple of shekels, or the clothing that they have, but now they need a lot more. As the war getting into the winter months right now, the weather is going to get progressively worse. And they just have to, each individual organization, they should stay focused what they're good at. And it would be nice for them to communicate with each other. If somebody has a friend in Michigan that could make winter sniper outfits, go ahead, go for it. If down in Florida, there's a company that makes shoes for combat and all-terrain all-weather shoes, wonderful. California, they have to stay focused what they're good at. And that's what I'm trying to address this with many of the organizations. So, and I have to tell you something, the Ukrainian Credit Union, I notice, have been donating money. A lot of parishes throughout the states have been giving money. It's very noble of them, but it's going to get progressively worse. There's actually in Honolulu, there's actually a group of Ukrainians that live in Ukraine that are fostering quite a few Ukrainian families. It's totally, it's great. So what else would you like to know?
Well, actually, that was interesting what you said, and I can relate to you on so many different points personally. When you told us about body bags, I think the most morbid request that I personally also requested this summer was, Iryna, how can we get the special cars that would transport like a refrigerator cars?
Right.
Because the summer was hot and so many soldiers who were killed, they needed to be taken home. So right. When you hear that kind of request, of course, you feel very depressed and not happy because you understand that it is somebody's sons or daughters that have to be brought home. With regards to communication, actually, I think from my personal experience, I think the communication between organizations, community organizations right now is much better than it used to be. Most of the organizations, they are volunteer organizations and people who work and assist. It's basically they're doing it at their own free time pro bono. Nobody trained them or paying them anything. And I think our volunteers doing terrific job and staying active for the 9th year. So yes, we did have all that started in 2014. And that actually, even it's sad to say, but it prepared us for the full-scale invasion in 2022, because we already had those channels where we provided humanitarian help after Maidan. And it happened, what I personally noticed, because I work with a lot of organizations, that everybody diverted. Basically, we divided in what areas we will work. I know about your work, and I know about kind deeds because it's actually my office who assisted with visas and entry documents for the first soldiers who arrived through that organization. And I was personally very happy and surprised when I was sent a photograph of somebody who came here without 2 legs, and 3 days later they were riding a bicycle or walking. I couldn't believe my eyes. So thank you for what you did, and for all of the organizations who bring the wounded soldiers here to the United States, and who also support those organizations that already opening in Ukraine, the centers that will provide treatment, proper treatment for Ukrainian soldiers in Ukraine, because that way the transportation costs, the cost of the prosthesis, they are much lower. And also by supporting this field in Ukraine, we invest in Ukrainian economy and training new specialists. So I think it will be very important for us, realizing the number of the wounded soldiers, to realize that we have to actually support this field in Ukraine. We will go to questions and answers later, but maybe you can touch base, because you still have a little bit of time. How easy was to you to transport humanitarian aid to Ukraine, medical equipment, or whether you experienced any kind of bureaucratic difficulties? And as you know, Ukraine passed a new law that's supposed to now regulate from December 1st how the humanitarian help and assistance supposed to be accounted in Ukraine. So if you did hear anything about it, I would like to hear from you on the general basis.
I had certain issues because there's so much. I mean, all right. So if you want to talk about medical equipment, let's say pharmaceutical goods, Ukraine has a law that they cannot transport to Ukraine medication that has an expiration date of 6 months. Now, I had so much medical equipment that was already sitting in Ukraine for pain medication, but the strike date was less than 6 months. I literally had to throw $700,000 worth of medical pharmaceutical goods to be washed, to be destroyed. So that's a problem. So if somebody needs an anti-inflammatory and analgesics or antibiotics, and we're going to be using them within 30 to 60 days, and the expiration date is 6 months, the Ukrainian government does not permit that. So that's number one. I definitely don't have any problems because all the equipment that I sent goes through the military. So in the beginning, I would be sending all my medical goods through the good deeds of MIST and other Dnipro, and I think there were other Ukrainian transport that they took them to Warsaw for practically no cost in the beginning. But listen, they can't do this for nothing. I certainly understand that. They have to charge some kind of fee, which is I can understand. And it would be transported to Warsaw, and then through Warsaw, the military would be dividending it up and bringing it into Lviv, and Lviv would distribute it to certain areas. The next thing was, like you said, doing manufacturing of prosthetics. I've always said that the smartest thing is to do it in Ukraine because it's a lot cheaper. When there was a period of time when it was 2 years, it's going to be a year and a half already, when we purchased MREs that were taken out of Afghanistan and put them in Kuwait. We bought them for $90,000, and the MREs were something like $4.50, while the regular MREs, meals ready to eat, they come in whole different packages or all different kind of variables. 8 out of the 12 are for regular, 9 to 12 are winter, and they just pack them up. So we bought them for nothing. But think about it. For $90,000, do you know how many soldiers I could have fed for $90,000 in Ukraine? Really? They would be happy with the piruhin, the holubchi, and the borsh where it would have cost you $2.50 for the whole week versus one MRE that's costing you $4.50 for one package, one soldier. But again, everybody's always worried about the word corruption. Did it occur? Absolutely. Is it existing? Probably, I don't know. I'm not there. But the reputation that they have, 6 months later, we'll find out what kind of corruption there is. But it continues to be like that. You heard about the procurement when they were buying the vegetables in Turkey, or with the winter jackets that the military was purchasing in Turkey. They contact me, and they were always asking me, and I said, you know what? Please do not get me involved in that conversation. When we're going off a tangent, just let me know what you need, and don't get me involved in winter coats, winter pants, winter shirts. I have no knowledge about what calison and pants cost. I'm not interested in that. I'm here and do whatever. I stay on the point where the soldiers need, how they need it. The other problem is transporting antibiotics from the States. When the war started, people were flying into Warsaw with huge briefcases of insulin and antibiotics, coming in, flying into Warsaw, staying in Warsaw overnight, and flying back, and the military would pick it up. Now we're dealing with much larger containers. But again, you need licenses to carry them, licenses to transport, insurance to make sure that the temperature of the plane stays the same, because you can't have high and low temperatures for antibiotics. They could crystallize, then they thaw out, and then they become crystallized when you're infusing them. And even though the antibiotic is good, it's very painful. So you can't be doing that. The fact what you brought about having the prosthetics done in Ukraine, absolutely. I think it should be done. As of today, I'm getting two variable numbers, but these numbers are still high. Slash SOCOR officially, they're having about 20,000 above and below upper extremity and lower extremity amputations. Other people are saying that number could be as high as 60,000 because of the butterfly mines that they're stepping on. They don't kill, they maim. All right. And that's the problem right now. You need tourniquets. So the number one place that is manufacturing in Ukraine is a place called Lutsk. There's actually one company that's producing, but then you've got two other companies. One is called Dnipro, and the other one is, that's it. And the other one is called Sich. And again, all three products are good, but they should stop bad-mouthing each other and saying, oh, one tourniquet's better than the other. As long as they get the job done, spread the wealth to the three companies, distribute them, cut the prices, it's very easily, because the American tourniquets are quite expensive. They're about $31. We could get them for $21. But for that, I could get 3 tourniquets made in Ukraine. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And especially I feel your frustration about the point that you mentioned, how painful it is to get rid of the medication that is donated by hospitals, that expiration date is already more than 6 months. And we were not able, because I was involved in also gathering and sending a lot of medical equipment to Ukraine last year. And yes, I don't know if anything can be done because it's regulated by the Ukrainian law, but it's painful to not be able to send to Ukraine perfectly good medicine, which will be used immediately, right?
Right.
Yes. So, well, I think our time right now, the major portion of the time is up. I actually would like to transition to Captain Owens, and then we will be back with you because I think all our questions, they are touching the same subject. Captain Owens, are you with us?
I am. Can read you loud and clear. Thank you, Iryna.
All right. Well, first, I want to thank you for all of your work and all of your support that you provided to us, Ukrainian community, when we advocated for Ukraine back in 2013-14. You were the most valuable member of Senator Toomey team, and not only his team. And I can never stop thinking, if everybody would have assistance like you were, I think maybe Ukraine would not be in the position like it is right now. Because when we were going from door to door and on the Congressional Hill, and we're talking about Crimea, talking about Eastern Ukraine, talking about Ukrainian army and what will happen next, only people like you listen, but some, I think they did not really hear us, how we were literally screaming inside and talking like, stand by Ukraine. Captain Owens, my preliminary research says that right now Ukrainian army forces have, as a date of 2023, active 700,000 personnel and 900,000 of reserve members. Is it correct? Is it the information that you have? And 42,000 of them are female soldiers, which is increased 30% comparing for the last 10 years. Can you please tell us a little bit statistic, what you know, what you can compare with the American numbers, and what you would be able to tell us in your general remarks?
Absolutely, Iryna. Thank you again for the invitation to speak here today, Dr. Perry, Roman, everybody. It's great to be among friends here. And yeah, by the way, I owe you all a big thank you. I mean, this is an important topic, and going back to my days on Capitol Hill, Iryna, Roman, everybody, many of the individuals on this Zoom, you were the first to really open my eyes. I knew part of the issue, but you really opened my eyes to a lot more of this in 2014. So you helped put it in perspective. So thank you. And I was working as National Security Advisor for Senator Toomey, as Iryna mentioned. It was important, especially to Pennsylvania. This is an important issue. I'm a Pennsylvanian. I'm from right outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, in Waterford. And it's important things to know, especially in that position in the Senate. I'm grateful for all of your time and all of your persistence on this and all of your help in growing my understanding. Since then, I've been very active in following Ukraine and this conflict. In fact, I had to leave Senator Toomey's office for several deployments to Europe to work on the Russia issue. I had the opportunity there to visit Ukraine several times, actually quite a few times, including visits to Kyiv, Lviv, and spent lots of time at the Joint Multinational Training Ground, Ukraine, watching and visiting and working right with our Ukraine counterparts alongside the Brits and the Canadians. Looking back at it now, it's actually a little disconcerting. The area, the bunkers where we slept, the barracks there on that JMPGU were one of the first things targeted in the offensive in 2022. They even targeted the gym that a lot of the junior soldiers, the Americans, took great pride in building as their little personal project, so they could train and work out right with the Ukrainians. It's disconcerting to see that was all gone now. But I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, because I think, Iryna, as you mentioned, the numbers here are staggering, and they need some perspective. So, I kind of want to lay out the perspective there, then kind of figure out, the bigger level issue and some questions that on how we move forward with this, because I think, the future is where the questions are, and we need to not only win the war, but we need to win the peace that follows. And to start thinking about that peace, we need to figure out those questions we have to answer now, to set the stage for that, to frame it correctly so that we can get ahead of this. Today, I work at America's Warrior Partnership, AWP, and we work directly with America's veterans all over the nation. Now, what makes us different at AWP and why it matters to Ukraine is that we focus on communities. We are in communities. We have 5 unique communities we work with directly, and we have partnered with 6 other large communities, and we have relationships, partnerships all over the nation. And our approach and our model is very unique. We solve problems at the lowest level by connecting veterans on the ground where we know, or we outreach and found them, to the resource available. We look into that community, we figure out everything that touches veterans, we tie them all together. So when a veteran goes and talks to one person, he needs something, that whole network's behind him. It's amazing. And if it can't be solved locally, or you're better in an area that doesn't have one of the communities, we have something called the network. Very original title, I know. It's a large team of caseworkers, and they help resolve issues. And the network brings in national teams of partners too. So all the big national foundations you've heard of before: Avalon Network, American Legion, Elizabeth Dole Foundation, TAPS, America Serves, Gary Sinise Foundation. We bring all those resources down together and take them right to the veteran, so the veteran doesn't have to go anywhere else. It's a one-stop shop. Once you're in our network, in our community, all the resources of the nation are at your disposal. So at AWP, we realized that all these groups were specialized, but they didn't know necessarily where the veterans are. We, on the other hand, worked directly in the community. We knew right where the veterans were. And so it's just a matter of figuring out how to get the most efficient use of these resources down to that veteran in the most efficient manner. So in 2022, when the second Russian invasion started, one of AWP's former board members immediately jumped into action. He actually set up a charity in Ukraine that connects those resources to those needs. So he partners with all the other charities. His job's not to specialize in raising for tourniquets or for ambulances. His job is to figure out those charities that are, and work with people on the ground and connect them together. And they use AWP's Warrior Surf technology. We're really proud to be supportive and remain engaged with Ukraine Strong and Help Ukraine 2022. They've got a great charity, and they've been very successful. But our focus today now is supporting Ukraine service members and veterans. And it's a cause that's deeply rooted in the principles of fostering our alliances, because just like the longstanding one between the United States and Europe, we all face external threats. So both the historic and current ties between the US and Europe have consistently underscored the importance of unity and a collective security. These relationships, forged through alliances like NATO, they've been vital in maintaining that stable world order, which we've enjoyed for the past several decades, and they've promoted a shared democratic ideal. So Ukraine's quest for sovereignty and security is inextricably linked to these values and the vital need support from its allies like the United States. Ukraine right now is at a crossroads. It's physically the crossroads of Europe and has demonstrated resilience in the face of these external threats, but today it's striving to protect its borders and preserve its democratic way of life. Ukraine's aspirations for a stable, independent future they deserve our unwavering support. And these challenges faced by Ukraine serve as a reminder of the ever-present need for a united front against aggression and the importance of bolstering our allies. This is an interconnected world, and the security of one nation is directly impacting the security of others. It is incumbent upon us in the United States to stand in solidarity, right? To ensure Ukraine's stability and then safeguard the collective peace afterwards as we strive to maintain it. So today, there's a lot of brave servicemen and women in Ukraine who are making great sacrifices in the pursuit of peace and stability, and it's their bravery and dedication. They deserve our respect, support, both symbolically and tangibly, and we need to look forward to figure out how to take care of them as we move forward. So having said all that, we need to figure out how to frame this discussion. So let's look at some of the conditions on how service members are facing now, some of the prevalent wounds that many are returning with, how we can help take care of them when they get back, how to make that transition back to civilian life possible. First, though, the conditions on the ground, we have to say this, it's hard to focus on veterans' care and transition when there's a major conflict going on. It's never going to be the whole focus as long as it's defending Ukraine's defending its very right to exist. And so it's unfortunate, but everyone knows that the focus has to be on winning the conflict. It's the only way to ensure that the sacrifice of those veterans was not made in vain. But the moment Ukraine wins this conflict, and I strongly believe they will, it's just a matter of when, then the focus has to be on winning the peace. And the veterans of this war are the future of Ukraine. And they will play a huge role in the structure of Ukraine going forward. So the challenges they face right now are unique in war. And then afterwards, the challenges they're going to face coming back from war are also very unique. So right now, you've got full-scale conflict. For the past 20 years in the United States, we had a low-intensity uprisings, low-scale firefights with terrorists. By comparison, this is full-scale warfare in Ukraine. This is now trench warfare, huge artillery battles, tank battles, thousands and thousands of mines. Completely different way of fighting. Drones. This is I'll just mention this briefly. This is a whole new way of warfare. In Iraq and Afghanistan, IEDs were the signature weapons of war, and they were the big explosive bombs that you didn't know. They're improvised. They buried underneath and they blow up trucks, and it was one of the major killers in the Iraq and Afghan war that really seriously hurt and injured a lot of American service members. In Ukraine, it's now drones, and Ukraine's leading Ukraine's leading the world right now in development of these drones. It's impressive what they're doing, both to build them, use them to attack, and also defend from them. Having said that, this new way of warfare is going to have a whole set of challenges that are very unique. The wounds are very unique as well. Full-scale war has a very high mortality rate. Compared to low-intensity uprising or conflict, artilleries and tanks, they're huge weapons, and they've got huge kill zones. They create massive shrapnel fields. They create overpressure. These are catastrophic. Men and women are not designed to live through these types of battles. This results in, and if you're on the periphery of it, it results in a large number of concussions, TBIs, and amputations. Second big one that you have to look at right now, especially in the South where the counteroffensive is taking place, is mines. That just as the doctor said a minute ago, they're designed to maim. They're designed to slow advances. They're not meant to necessarily kill everybody, because if you're killing a soldier, it's easier to after you advance to take care of that soldier right away. But if they're wounded, you've got to evacuate them from the battlefield, and you're taking up 2 more soldiers off the battlefield as well. It usually results in very serious amputations, usually several joints in the lower body. And then the challenge with drones and the impact and how that plays going forward, it's just like IEDs. They can't be seen. They can't be anticipated. they're the silent killer, right? No one knows where they are. They can't defend against them, just like with an IED. So they're very similar in that respect. It leads to very high anxiety, and any strikes can be traumatic because these are big weapons. They're big warheads they're putting on these drones now, and the results of PTSD from that stress, these traumatic events, the rates of PTSD are going to be very, very high. So for many Americans, it's really tough to imagine because despite being over 20 years, most Americans were not impacted by the war, right? Many didn't know anyone who served or didn't have a military connection. Many still don't know a veteran today. So let's look at some numbers, as Iryna mentioned. In all the global war on terror for the past 20 years, the U.S. lost 7,000 service members. That's a really large number, and it was felt all over the nation. And there's another 35,000 wounded, and of those wounded, about 3,000 required amputations. They're big numbers, but we need some perspective on that because when the U.S. was deployed fully in Iraq, we had 170,000 troops on ground, and there's about 3.5 million veterans of the Afghan-Iraq wars. That was in 2007. There's 380 million Americans. So the percentage of those who served at any one time was very small. And most of those were family members of people who had prior service. By comparison, Ukraine's got 43 million citizens, about 780,000 troops. So really, I mean, that's 4 times. There's 780,000 fully mobilized. That's 4 times as many as the U.S. had deployed at one time. So depending on the source, I mean, Russia got roughly the same number. That's a staggering number of individuals. Those are individuals that are not soldiers generally by trade. They're being mobilized and being trained on the fly. So the economic impact of pulling these million citizens out of your economy and putting them into wartime, it's huge. Those are fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, friends, colleagues. Those are going to have an impact not just directly but indirectly as well. So it's hard to find full statistics about the Ukrainian wounded and injured, but the Wall Street Journal right now is estimating about 120,000 Ukrainians have been seriously wounded. So that's 4 times as many as in the entire Iraq-Afghanistan campaign, with 50,000 Ukrainians roughly having needed serious amputations, and 10,000 still needed prosthetics. So that 50,000, amputations, as the doctor mentioned ago, that is a staggering number. If the U.S. in 20 years of war had 3,000, and Ukraine so far in 18 months has 15,000, that's an average 92 per day through the entire conflict. 92 soldiers a day needing an amputation. So it's a huge number, and of those, it's also worth mentioning here. We dove into some of the numbers with the Wall Street Journal and others, and when we reached out, it wasn't really clear of these numbers how many were civilian and how many were soldiers. So there's this important distinction here, which Russia doesn't care about, and they've got a homicidal quest to eradicate Ukraine and its culture and its people. So they don't care, but to those of us who value human life, it's kind of important. A soldier in a battlefield is a legit target of war. Got it. Civilian, no, that's off limits. It's a war crime. And so to understand we have to understand the scope of this issue. And that's why those numbers are really important. And so when we take care of them, we got to make that transition back to civilian life possible. So if we're going to have around 2 million, at least 2 million Ukrainian veterans coming back after the war, transitions back to civilian life are very hard. First, economically, veterans are very important. They're great workers. They follow directions. They lead. They accomplish. After the war, they go back to every community in the nation, right? So it's important to help them back into the workforce, back into their families, back into the community. But no one's ever really gotten this right before. The last time we really looked at this, America didn't get this right after World War I, after World War II, after Korea, after Vietnam. They didn't really do it well after the Gulf War. Even now, we're still struggling with this. And it's not nearly, especially in the last 40 years, we haven't seen anything nearly in terms of scope, a demobilization of this size. And so transitions are hard and messy, and every veteran is different. So in the United States, we have a program called SkillBridge, where veterans can try out several different jobs at major corporations until they find a good fit. It's been one of the most successful job transition programs that the U.S. has created. It's run out of the Department of Defense. So before they leave active duty service, you go to SkillBridge program. Also, programs like the GI Bill that ensure veterans can go back to school and learn a new skill and get a degree. Those have been tremendously successful. But from our experience at America's War Partnership, one of the best ways we've seen veterans transition back into the community and is to be fully embraced by the community itself. It's as simple as a community checking in, finding volunteer opportunities for veterans, meeting up with local veterans in the area, listening to the veterans who are your neighbors. It matters. Having people nearby, a support system in your community matters. That's bigger than anything the government can do sometimes, is making sure that communities are supported and supporting their veterans as they come back. So in addition to job placement, job training, GI Bill, the national government of Ukraine really needs to focus on how to take care of those who sacrifice. And part of that is empowering communities to take care of them. But with so many wounded and injured and ill, it's going to take a lot of time and resources. So how will the government pay for it? That's going to be a major challenge. And it needs to be addressed by the government. It needs to be addressed by NGOs. It needs to be addressed by charities. It needs to be addressed by ordinary citizens, because this is going to be a whole of government approach. Everybody's got to get involved in this. Another big question they have to ask at the government of Ukraine is how it's going to take care of the civilians injured in war. In the United States, we have an entire department set up to take care of those injured service members. It's the VA. We also have a Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security disability system to take care of those who are civilians. It's not perfect, and it's super expensive. And other countries have far more extensive safety nets. But even after decades of reform and being very well funded, the Department of Veterans Affairs in the United States is still plagued by problems and a lack of trust among veterans. They got long wait times for care here in the U.S., centralized hospitals, lack of access to specialty care, just to name a few of the issues. And that's been going on decades. So sorry, go ahead.
So what I wanted just to reflect on a few of your points, that coming back to the most probably the saddest one, number of amputations. The numbers that I have, that this is 150 per day. So again, I don't know the exact numbers, and I cannot confirm that this is the right source, but the number of amputations is extremely, extremely high. Number two issue, support for the veterans. We in the United States, we receive a huge amount of Ukrainian veterans who are coming here with injuries that not possible to treat in Ukraine. We're receiving those soldiers, and after being with us, after receiving our support, those people, they get a second, I would say, a second chance to breathe and second chance to have a purpose in life to live. Because speaking with them, when they come here, they have nothing but desire to come back to the front line and just kill more Russians. But they don't have desire just to live and enjoy. They reject their family members. They don't want to be a burden for them and for the society. So the support for the veterans, Ukrainian government is trying to build a modern system, taking experiences from the different countries. But we all have to recognize that Ukraine is a post-Soviet country. So number one challenge that Ukrainian veterans are having, it's actually issues with receiving proper documentation. It's going through special medical attestations, attesting to their injuries, getting some kind of a special class be designed as a handicap, receive documents. It takes months and months, and if somebody doesn't have two limbs, he cannot even climb from their apartment on the 4th or 7th floor. So it's difficult and it takes months. And right now, we actually have a former Ukrainian veteran, not former, he's Ukrainian veteran, former soldier who was here, Roman Horodonsky. You all, probably many of you know him because he was the one who was really featured in Philadelphia Inquirer. He actually started the organization that helps Ukrainian veterans with all the documents and all the process. But as far as I know, this is only the first and only organization that helps so many veterans with that kind of process. Number two, it's a physical rehabilitation. Well, obviously, people need to learn how to walk, how to use their hands that they receive, prosthetic hands, and how to tend for themselves on a daily basis. As again, mostly the way how they perceive themselves, not as a heroes, because we consider them our heroes. They consider themselves a burden for their families and burden to the society, which lead us into another subject of psychological injuries. The PTSD and the trauma, psychological trauma that the soldiers experienced in being in the conditions that they were never before. This is basically most of the soldiers, they were civilians. They were lawyers, engineers, architects, artists. They all joined Ukrainian army, and it's extremely difficult for them to survive. And especially for those ones who were in the Russian captivity, who were tortured. And here I would like to mention women, Ukrainian women soldiers who were kept by Russians, tortured, raped, intimidated horribly. We all can hear their testimony right now. So obviously psychological injuries, to let those people have to deal with them so they would be able to integrate into the society, and also psychological help for their family members. Because first, as a human being, I experience personally enormous pain when I see somebody who's the age of my son, who already suffered so much. So as a mother and as a human being, I know that all what they wanted, I would treat them the same way like I would treat you, but I feel pain and they're not happy about it. So their mothers, fathers, spouses, children, they don't know how to accept them back the way how they are. And another point, it's actually reintegration back into the society with studies, new programs, creation of new jobs, that they would be able, even with their injuries, they would be able to be productive members of the society. And especially, again, I'm coming back to female soldiers. The number of female soldiers in Ukrainian armed forces doubled for the last 10 years. And all of us, we just have to know one fact, that until September, 42,000 Ukrainian female soldiers did not have a proper uniform. They were wearing a male uniform, including male underwear. So they didn't have a proper pants, proper underwear, proper bras. So it's only in September Ukrainian government was able to provide for 42,000 female soldiers in Ukraine. So again, right now, this is just a summary of my reflection. And when you begin your conversation, when Ukraine will win, because we all know Ukraine will win. But the problem is when the bickering in Congress will continue, and people will think about that they're concerned and they're deeply thinking about issues that perhaps exist or perhaps don't exist in Ukraine, or bickering about corruption that exists actually everywhere. Well, Ukrainian men and women are dying. And if members of the Congress will still be just concerned and delay help to Ukraine, next year, after this horrible winter, there will be no men in Ukraine who would be able to fight. There will be more women who would have to join. And next year, the population of Ukraine will decrease dramatically. So we all know the numbers of the Russian army, and we all know that Russia has no value for human life. So the sad part of this entire war, while some members of Congress are deeply concerned, supported by our European allies, which delays proper help, immediate help to Ukraine, Ukrainians are dying, defending liberty in Europe, defending freedom in Europe, defending peace in Europe. Basically, what Ukrainians are doing right now, they're protecting NATO countries. So again, we are talking today how to support our veterans, but the best way to support the veterans is to stop the war. And then we will actually take care of the veterans. So it's
not just stop the war. It's letting Ukraine win the war, giving Ukraine the tools it needs to win the war. Ukraine will win the war if Ukraine can do that.
Win it right now.
Absolutely.
I asked Dr. Perry to help me with the questions because I had to join from my cell phone. I had technical difficulties from my computer, not computer savvy person. So I don't see the number of questions that actually were submitted. I know I can see the number of participants. And is Dr. Perry here? Can you hear me?
I'm on, and we've got one question so far, and we'll welcome others to share their questions. It's about defending the Washington Treaty, the founding treaty of NATO, and are Ukrainians defending that?
So what is exact question?
It's written as a statement. It's really, are Ukrainians defending the Washington Treaty, the founding treaty of NATO?
Well, I guess that would be Captain Owens as a former as a person who used to work and walk those long hallways of the Congress, I think he would be the one who would probably address this particular question and probably continue on my most recent statement. Captain Owens?
Thank you, Iryna, and Dr. Pereira, thank you. That's a hard question. I mean, there's been a list of agreements and treaties that have been broken when Russia decided to invade the first time, and then now when they escalated the war again. So, is it a question of whether or not Ukraine is defending the Washington Treaty? I think right now, without Ukraine being a NATO member, I think it's more fair to say that they're defending Europe and they're defending European interests, and they're keeping Europe and the United States safe by basically being the steam release valve for Russia. Russia was going to attack something and go, and they picked Ukraine. It could have just easily been Poland or the Baltics, but they didn't. They went after Ukraine because of a myriad of reasons. And right now, the U.S. has this incredible opportunity to support its ally and watch its ally, the most combat tested probably army right now in the world, beat up the second largest army in the world in Russia. Well, what formerly the second largest army in the world, and it fits in every one of the national defense strategy documents that the United States has ever made, and it's a known vulnerability that Russia's had this problem for a long time. And if America can keep supporting Ukraine, it wins. It achieves its long-term objectives. It holds up NATO together. You know, there's the old statement that probably the best advocate for NATO right now has been Vladimir Putin, because he's been the only person who's been able to unite NATO together. No other person has been able to unite NATO in such a way besides Vladimir Putin. And until now, you could probably arguably say President Zelensky. So I hope that helps answer some question a little bit. I have very strong personal feelings on this, but I'll keep those for myself here at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Captain. Dr. Holuka, I would like to come back to you. Are you with us?
He is.
He is. Well, I will allow a few seconds.
Yes.
Okay, Doctor, I would like to reiterate what I just said about physical, psychological injuries to the Ukrainian veterans. And what is your view? How would you address this growing need, this horrible need? Because the numbers that Captain Owens stated are huge numbers, and we all understand that this winter will be brutal.
There's an acute and a chronic situation. So we're all behaving at an acute mode. The trauma that's occurring right now, mentally and physically. The chronic situation is much more complex, because again, the scenario is the acute factor supersedes the chronic factor. So with the acute factor, as of just at the end of October, with the end of September, they were responding to anywhere close to 200 wounded a day. Now, because of what's going on in Adrivka, what's going on in Kherson, and what's going on in Robotyne down south, they are having an average of 300 to 600 wounded. Of the 300 to 600 wounded a day, you're dealing with close to 70% of some kind of amputation. I don't know what the numbers are specifically, upper and lower extremity, only God knows. What's going to happen later on in the future will be the chronic. Once the resolution happens, there's no crystal ball when this thing is going to end. There's going to be a chronic situation. The PTSD, that's going to be a huge factor. Who's going to be taking care of the wounded soldiers? Yeah, about the prosthetics is the big. And then the trauma. Right now, there is a shortage of PTSD treatments throughout the world. In the United States, the VA program is kind of abysmal, still abysmal, but it's getting better to compare to what it was in the past. And what's happening in Ukraine right now is going to be a tough situation also. Now, do I say that there should be funding? I don't know where this funding is coming from, where it's going to become, because so far the U.S. government is not giving that much support in the health, or in practically non-existent in mental health. All right, most of the funding that you're hearing is militarily, and then there's a humanitarian support, and that's restructuring. I'm going off a tangent here because once this thing is going to get resolved, an end's going to happen, you're going to have a total reconstruction of Ukraine. Water, sewage, electrical, transportation, everything's going to have to be rebuilt. So the problem still will arise is how much funding is going to go to mental health. Our Northwell system is working on telehealth with translators. There's a very large Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking population of physicians that are in the northeastern region that are supporting Ukraine. There's a lot of telemedicine that's starting to work. For the old physicians, it's very difficult to understand how telehealth works, but it's starting to. The younger generation actually is working a lot more doing telemedicine, telehealth. So, but again, this up to the captain. You could see the VA system is burdened, and now it's getting a lot of notoriety because of that. All right. So,
well, thank you, Doctor. Captain Owens, I would like to
could I just? Hey, sorry, Iryna, do you mind if I just do a quick follow up? I think the doctor raised a great point. I think when Ukraine gets a chance to rebuild after this and try to win that peace again, I think there's a couple of things they can do that we can use our examples, our mistakes in the United States, especially in the VA, some of the things that we went wrong, and how they build the next system for veterans in Ukraine. In the U.S., we have a very centralized system in the United States for the VA. So if we're going to set up a system in Ukraine, use a decentralized system. Don't replicate services. There's doctors and clinics all over Ukraine that are already there. In fact, there's been a lot of studies about how decentralizing and putting money down into communities and letting Ukrainians go to see the local, any veteran going to see the local physician and knowing their doctor every time and having the same doctor you see when you go in is a huge, huge game changer. And it helps both care, it helps outcomes, it helps PTSD as well. Even those who are not being treated for PTSD, it helps the stressor go down. Every veteran is different. It has to be a one-size-fits-one response. And so let those relationships build with those doctors build relationships with their patients. Let the specialists see local veterans. Let veterans choose and determine their own care. It's just the mantra of the U.S. military, right? Centralized command, decentralized execution. And further, I'll say, a lot of the experiences the U.S. has had with PTSD and TBI are very similar to the same experiences the Ukrainians are having right now in this war as well. PTSD and TBI are very difficult to deal with, as the doctor mentioned a second ago. PTSD is more how you deal with the stressors. TBI is more of an actual injury to the brain. And so one's more physical and one's more of a counseling kind of way, but you can never counsel your way out of mental health. I think that's kind of the bigger picture. Counseling is definitely part of it, but it's got to be a much bigger approach in how you look at individuals and take a holistic approach to a veteran that way. So with that, Iryna, I'll turn it back over to you.
No, that was a great comment, Captain Owens. What I wanted to ask you, and today I'm asking really hard questions and making hard statements, so I apologize, but the subject is extremely difficult for all of us, and it's painful for all of us. I would like to ask you about suicidal rates. If you have numbers for the American veterans, and if you have, because I don't have those numbers, for Ukrainian veterans, but before I would let you answer this question, I know that some of the Ukrainian veterans who came from the front line and from the Russian captivity, they would never be able to be the same people. So especially those ones who survived Russian prisons, they survived physically, but there's no other words, but just to say that they're just semi-functioning physically. They lost their minds, and I don't know about suicidal rates, but I know that some of them, they will never be able to live on their own and be productive members of the society. They will not be back to the normal life.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Caregivers is something, and end of life care is huge in the United States, just like it will be in Ukraine as well. Having a support structure of someone who knows how to take care of somebody or be trained on them. We found in the United States, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation here does great work on this. We partner with them very closely, that when a veteran has had a traumatic event, or they can't live by themselves, or it's at the end of their life and they can't take care of themselves anymore, it's not just a family member who's there as a caregiver, but sometimes that family member's got to go through training, or they have to bring someone else in to do it because that person can't take care of them. And one, it's expensive. Two, it's hard to do. Three, it's very time consuming. So it's a major challenge. I don't think there's a really easy way to look at it, other than trying to get a good support network in the community to help that family to go through that. I think one of the other things that we didn't really mention much talk about was a lot of the widows. Wall Street Journal had a great article on today talking about a lot of the widows who were left behind from this conflict. The Tragedy Assistance for Survivors, the TAPS program here in the United States, just recently launched a big organization into Ukraine. They're on the Dnieper River right there, and they got a big outfit to help provide resources, help provide counseling to those widows who've gone through these tragic accidents. And a lot of it really, again, it comes from having a support network, having your families, having your friends, having your communities around you. It's the best thing we've seen so far from all of our communities in the United States. The best way to try to help ease these issues.
Thank you, Captain.
Dr.
Perry.
Yeah,
Dr.
we've have a few statements and a couple that I've responded to in some way. We're not going to be able to get to them all, so we're going to take one last question here, and it is, what's the current support that we can depend upon from Poland during this period of time? And I presume that suggests it's in the context of how, in light of the title of our program, how that connects with service members and veterans.
So the question probably would go to either of the panelists, right? Or Dr. Holuka or Captain Owens.
Yeah, I think it can. And maybe if you could each respond to that for a minute or two, and then we'll wrap it up.
Right now, there's the Ministry of Health in Poland. It's putting a heavy burden on them. They're very supportive. I spoke to the Vice Prime Minister while they were in New York for that UN General Assembly. They are supportive. There are quite a few hospitals, small little hospital in Przemyśl and Rzeszów, where they're permitting American and Canadian surgeons to operate on Ukrainian soldiers. They permit to use their operating rooms at the end of the day, and which is great, because they also, don't forget, they are running a business, and a medical business, and they're actually giving the Ukrainian soldiers the opportunity of being operated in Poland by very skillful Canadian and American and AICM physicians that come from France also. So that's the only thing I can tell you about that.
Captain?
I think getting I think it could be pretty good. I think with the elections in the past week or so here, I think the new government has an opportunity to really strengthen and deepen ties, especially on the planning front going forward. That's something the past administration wasn't very focused on. They're more focused on trying to figure out how to really win the war, but wasn't really focused thinking forward. The U.S. has heavily invested in Poland and trained the Polish army, trained the Polish military at large on how to deal with not only the conflict, but what comes next, what comes after. That's treating, that's military hospitals. We have major exercises there every year that help deal with everything from combat casualty evacuation, et cetera. A lot of those trainings now are being stood up in Poland and are training a lot of the Ukrainians, and they're going back and forth. So I think there's still a lot of room for growth in that relationship as it goes forward. I think Poland's still a stalwart ally of Ukraine. I think the election over the past week will definitely change some things, but I think it actually might still be a nice, strong relationship. I don't think too much is going to change overall, in my very humble opinion.
Thank you. I have actually last one question directed to Dr. Perry. It's just a question that I formed during our discussion, and it's something that I think about it very often, that the full-scale invasion brought a special need in new professions previously not available in Ukraine, like people who would do special counseling, people who would provide special services for military wounded. So we actually have totally another field. It's an educational field that needs to be fulfilled, but Ukraine has no educational basis to provide and to grow new specialists. So it's actually would be really interesting to hear from Dr. Perry, whether you, Dr. Perry, and Manor College have any plans to expand and to be involved in educational field in Ukraine to prepare new specialists who would address needs of the veterans.
So let's start with where we are today, and thank you for asking that, Consul Mazur. We have been working closely with the Congresswoman who represents our district and Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. And when the war started, restarted, I should say, or got exacerbated 2 Februaries ago, we worked closely with her to see what we could do to foster educational opportunities for Ukrainians who were affected. So those conversations developed, and as they did, they also reflected who we currently serve, which is 65% first-generation students, students who are working by a margin of about 80%, students who are largely Philadelphians and Pennsylvanians. And the conclusions that we came to was that if there was some new funding to support financial aid for students from Ukraine, then that would need to be targeted in a way that would be accommodating to all groups, but also open to Ukrainians who are properly documented in the United States because of the way Title IV funding works. So the resolution that we came to, and thanks to the work of Congresswoman Dean, is that the college received a $1.27 million grant, the primary function of which is to support refugees, immigrants, and first-generation college students. So that's sort of tier one. Tier two is, I'm going to sort of answer your question with a question and say that we have currently available online coursework, and we even have programs which the predominant, if not the whole part of which, are online and available. So we would love to be able to further education in Ukraine through remote resources, particularly seeing as we're the only college in the country founded by Ukrainians. So the issue is that having the right partners in Ukraine to do that, because there are institutions of education in Ukraine, and so we don't want to be seen by them as a threat so much as that we want to be seen as a resource. So we'll have to talk about that more with you to see, what opportunities can present. But there have been a few conversations. We have partnered with some institutions in Ukraine for some one-off programs. We hope to do more of that. But there is not like a cohort of 15 or 20 students who are moving through a program remotely. And I think that's sort of the next step for us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Perry. Could you please let us know, right now it's 7:49. We are basically 1 hour, 20 minutes into our meeting, into our program.
Yep.
How much time is left?
I would say none.
None? Okay.
I would say
then
none.
It would be the time to thank our panelists. Dr. Holuka, again, what you did for Ukraine and what you did for the society, Ukrainian society, and in particular to Ukrainian military, Ukrainian armed forces. There are no words how we can thank you, but we need more, as you said it by yourself. And as our ambassador Markarova says, please do more because that's what we need. You're absolutely right on point that there is a fatigue over Ukraine, fatigue in the media. And yes, we are all tired, but we all have to just find somehow another day, another inspiration, have another push, because the war is not over. And Ukrainian soldiers, they need our help, and they will need our help even after the victory. Captain Owens, I really, really, again, appreciate all your support you provided for us years back in Congress. I thank you for your service to this country, and I thank you for your service also to Ukraine, because your service to the United States and you being such a great partner to our community, to our organizations, your vision and the principles that you stand by, they really, really appreciate it very much by our entire community. We all know you, we remember you with huge gratitude, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Dr. Perry,
thank you.
Thank you very much for creating this program, because it brings extremely honest spotlight on the most important issues that we are discussing at a particular time with each conference. And I want personally to thank you for being such a pioneer for Ukraine, for being such a Ukrainian, because, you know, people are born Ukrainian, but you just became Ukrainian being so deeply invested in our community and our cause. So, Dr. Perry, thank you very much for everything that you do for Ukraine and for our community. And I know that you will thank officially to our sponsor, but I want to thank personally Anatoly Murha, Mary Kolody, Roman Patek, entire team of the Ukrainian Self-Reliance Credit Union for continuous support and for everything that you did for our community, uniting our community, providing humanitarian assistance and financial assistance to support programs like that. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Consul Mazur. And let me echo your remarks of thanks to Dr. Holuka and to Darrell Owens. Darrell, we're grateful for the time you shared, and Dr. Holuka for yours as well. I want to, since Iryna thanked you both, I won't be long in my remarks about you both, but know that that my feelings are as robust, and that I look forward to future conversations with both of you. And Iryna, I think it's important to thank you, not only for hosting as our moderator this evening, but also because you really have been an incredible force. In case those of you who are our audience haven't noticed already, Iryna is an incredible force in the United States for the people of Ukraine, and they are blessed by you. They're blessed by you. And, you know, as we had our discussions this evening, I was sort of having a variety of different emotions, and of course, really feeling heavy-hearted about the suffering that Ukraine's veterans and service members are enduring. It is just so heartbreaking. And so I'm grateful for all of your advocacy and all of your work. Everybody who's a part of our program and are part of our past programs, a part of our future programs, I know that they feel the same way. Everybody who's a part of Ukraine's community and America's community who's paying attention and understands the way the facts shake out are appreciative. So I just want to encourage you all to please continue your work. And if we at Manor can in some way do our part, whether it's through education or our personal touch on things, we would be happy to listen to those ideas to see ways that we can join in your forces for good. And for those who may not know, we have a number of individuals on our campus who speak Ukrainian much better than me. I only know a few phrases. None of them are bad, which is good. and we're happy to accommodate people who are Ukrainian only speaking on our campus as well in the ways that we can. So thank you all again. I also want to thank our VP for Marketing, Communications, and Advancement, Kelly Pfeiffer. She's the one who brought together all of our creative materials with the Office of Marketing Communications. She's the one who helped us to get our Zoom program brought together this evening. She's the one who is behind the scenes all the time and helping us to make sure that we can be successful in what we do. So very grateful to her, grateful to the credit union. As for this coming spring, we'll look forward to our 16th program, if you can believe it, our 16th Ukraine Dialogue program. If any of you have thoughts or ideas, including in the audience, for future program topics, feel free to please send those to us, and we'll give them due consideration. So with that, we'll close and we'll say, please keep our conversation and everyone who we've talked about, the service members, the veterans, in your prayers. Let's keep Ukraine. Let's also keep the Middle East and Israel in our prayers. And please keep Manor College and our students in your prayers. So thank you all. God bless you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Perry, Iryna, Dr.
Thank you.
Holuka. All the best, guys. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.